Hey everyone, welcome to Sports Talk again. John Gerardi, sports editor here, alongside the doctor, Chris Masse, as usual. Talking a little high school football, talking about week 3, looking into week 4. Let's start, Masse, with we'll start here with Williamsport. Williamsport beat Central Mountain 36-17 this past week. Williamsport just played well all around from an offensive and defensive well, but their offense was kind of clicking on all facets.
Yeah, their offensive line did a really good job, especially in the second half, of getting their running game going. And Central Mountain had struggled the first 2 games, but it was actually the run defense was actually pretty good in those games. And this time, Warrior Run Williamsport took over the line of scrimmage in the second half. Kyrie Whaley and Giovanni White both had over 100 yards rushing. So with the passing game that they have going with Elijah Way and Kyrie Bradshaw and Tevin Williams, Trey Damschroeder, guys like that, it's a really good mix right now.
I was going to say, you mentioned Whaley and Giovanni White. I mean, Whaley 14 for 133, White 6 for 110. It's nice for them. Like, Coach Pearson has to be happy that he's had 2 backs who both can move the ball, both go over 100 in the same game, and kind of help to kind of spread that running game out.
Yeah, and they're 2 kind of different styles of runners. White's a really fast guy. He's kind of one of those Swiss Army knives that they can use in a variety of ways. He gets involved in the passing game too, and Whaley's kind of a more he's got good speed, but he can also go up the middle and get some short yards. And they're playing without Jamel Bailey right now, who had a really good game in week 1. And I think I'm excited to see what he can do when he comes back. So. One of the not a bonus, you don't want to see anybody get injured, but I think with Bailey out, they've been able to build some nice depth from, having White step up. So now when you get a guy like Jamel Bailey back, now you really give defenses a lot to think about, because now you've got even more weapons.
Yeah, exactly. Central Mountain, they scored 14 points there in the fourth quarter. They struggled early, but if you're Central Mountain, I think you can kind of take some positives away from those late scores going into next week.
Definitely. I think it was their best they've played through 3 weeks. And, I thought going in, Williamsport would mercy roll them, and Central Mountain fought that off. It was a pretty competitive. It was 10-3 with a couple minutes to go in the first half, and things got away from Central Mountain in the last couple minutes there and made it 24-3. But I like the way they compete. They've got a really good young nucleus, a lot of good talented players like sophomore Cole Corman. He's going to be he already is a good one, and he's just going to keep getting better. I was impressed with Kai Kissel. Hunter Hoy played a good game at quarterback. He's a really athletic playmaker for them. So they've got a lot of good pieces. I don't know how much it's going to reflect in their record this year. But I think if the fan base is patient, I think something good's building there. They're young, they're just super young right now, and I think progress is being made regardless of what the record says. And I think a year or 2 down the road, I think they're going to be pretty tough.
I was going to say, these kind of like little bumps in the road early for this team, being young, will just be beneficial going forward.
Yeah,
so you take the losses now, but you have to look kind of at the bigger picture in a year or 2.
Yeah, and I always remember 2012 Jersey Shore. I saw them play against Montoursville, and they got smoked. But you could tell something good was there, and they went 0-10. But you could, I remember writing a column saying, be patient, something good's coming. They won districts the next year, and, look what they've done since then. And exactly. I'm not saying that's what Central Mountain's going to do, obviously, but I think there's pieces there that can serve as a launching pad for this program going forward.
Exactly. Loyalsock with a nice bounce back win after that loss to Southern by beating Hughesville 30-3. Dolan Harmon, which is a monster game on the ground, 30 carries, 184, and 2 touchdowns. It just seemed like Hughesville didn't have an answer to try to slow him down on the ground.
Yeah, and that's after Hughesville had played the run really well their first 2 games, But Harmon, he's been kind of in beast mode in their 2 wins. He had 166 in their season opener against Mifflinburg, and then he goes to town against Hughesville. Also had a 40-yard catch. And that's, I think we said last week, you can kind of throw that Southern Columbia game away because they're Southern Columbia, and this is a young Loyalsock team. And now I think we've seen what they can do against Mifflinburg and Hughesville, and that's, a good indication for them. And just like with Central Mountain, Dolan Harmon's an underclassman. Danny Dow, who threw for over 200 yards, he's an underclassman. Jaleel Coates. They've got a lot of good playmakers, and they have a good offensive line that's making everything go for them too.
Yeah, I mean, Henry wrote in the football preview this year about how Loyalsock, they lost their standout quarterback, standout wide receiver, but you got, like you said, you got Jaleel Coates, you have Danny Dow who's stepping up well, and then also in the running game you got Dolan Harmon, as we mentioned. It seems like Justin Van Fleet's done a great job of not having to rebuild, just kind of having people step up, kind of reload, and just keep the team kind of rolling on all cylinders. Yeah,
and it's not the. Justin Van Fleet talked about it in the preseason. It's not their first rodeo in terms of replacing dynamic quarterbacks and receivers. You just go down the line with Kyle Datris and Connor Watkins, who's shining at Villanova now as a starter, replacing guys like that. Gerald Ross, a receiver, and Ryan Glunk and Reese Watkins. So it's kind of they kind of roll these dynamic playmakers off the assembly line there, and that's what they've been kind of able to do this year, and having a veteran line to kind of build the foundation around is huge for them. And I think it's given those first-time starters time I think it takes pressure off them knowing they don't have to try to make something happen, that if they just follow the blocks and follow what those guys are doing up front, good things can happen.
A week ago, in week 3, Blake Davis for Hughesville throws 5 touchdown passes. This, obviously Hughesville only puts up 3 this week. Do you think, though, that's kind of going to be a nice kind of grounding moment for him, that to kind of get him to refocus and resettle and kind of go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the whole team, I think they're better. I think they're probably better than they played against Loyalsock. Mm-hmm. I think for whatever reason I think they matched up pretty good with them last year too, and this year too, and they got blown out both times. It's just one of those mental humps, I think, that they have that's been hard for them to knock down. But I think, you find out a lot about yourself after a loss. Loyalsock found out a lot about itself and how it responded, and now Hughesville goes and plays Lewisburg, who's a 3-0 team, so they don't have time to sulk about it. They gotta regroup, and I think it's not all on Blake Davis. I think he was being pressured all night. I think the line didn't give him a whole lot of time to throw. So, when you lose, it's a team effort. And when you win, it's a team effort. So Hughesville, it's back to the drawing board for them. But if they can learn from this the way Loyalsock learned from its loss, and they have a chance to make a statement against a good Lewisburg team.
Exactly. Danville beats Montoursville 44-20. But, going into the half, that's just a 9-8 game. Yep. And Montoursville played really outstanding against a solid Danville team there for that first half. But, going into this one, I think Montoursville knew they'd be in for a tough battle against Danville. And just have, the Ironmen just were able to kind of get things going, kind of click there in the second half and just get it going and pull away.
Fun fact, before we get into that, the Niners beat the Cowboys 44-20 in a big game in 1995, their 10th game. Everybody was like, Dallas is 8-1, and the Niners had just lost to the Saints and the expansion Panthers. Oh no, Dallas is out for revenge from the title game loss last year, and the Niners embarrassed them.
And you can look that up.
Yeah, you can look it up. I mean, technically, it was week 11 because of the bye, but it was actually the Niners' 10th game of the season. But I digress. If there's such a thing as a good loss, I think this was a good loss for Montoursville because Danville's ranked number 1 in the state in AAA. They're the 4-time defending district champion. They won 56-0 against Montour last year. And like you said, this game was a 1-point game at the half. It was 23-20 in the fourth quarter, and then Danville pulled away. But there's a ton of positives for Montoursville to build on. And the fact that this was a really competitive game just bodes really well for them the second time. If there is a second time around, if they see them again in districts, now they know that they can compete with them. And it's just a matter of ironing out the wrinkles that allowed Danville to get away from them in the fourth quarter. But I think Montoursville should feel really good about itself going forward.
Danville's defense is really solid, but Jimmy Messina, 10 for 23, no interceptions, 119 and 2 touchdowns. I think if you're Montoursville, especially if you're Jimmy, I think you have to be really happy with that performance from a quarterbacking perspective against a really solid defense, and being able to kind of use that to boost a little confidence if you needed any.
And that Danville starters had only allowed 7 points in their first 2 games. So, yeah, the fact that they were able to move the ball pretty consistently through the air and on the ground, we talked about it last week. They have a pretty balanced offense. And, Jimmy was pretty on. And Christian Banks and Hayden Harvey ran really well as a duo. Harvey had a career high. I think it was 86 yards. Banks had 56 and a touchdown. They had combined, they averaged over 5 yards a carry. So they've got some nice balance there. They've got a lot of different playmakers in the passing game. So I think they were younger on offense than defense coming into the season, but I like the way they're trending offensively.
That'll do it here for our first part of this installment. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about South Williamsport, Muncie, and Jersey Shore. And then in our third part, we're going to break down week 4.